The relentless winds of Ahch-To whipped around her, a stark contrast to the quiet hope that had propelled her across the galaxy. Rey stood, outstretched hand trembling slightly, holding aloft a relic of a bygone age, a lightsaber, once wielded by Anakin Skywalker, then by his son, Luke. She had found him, the Last Jedi Master, on this isolated island, shrouded in mystery and the spray of the wild ocean. But the figure who turned to face her was not the legendary hero of her childhood tales. He was a broken man, eyes filled not with wisdom or resolve, but with a deep, consuming weariness. His robes, once vibrant, now hung heavy with the dust of years and the weight of untold sorrow. The silence between them stretched, thick with expectation, and, for Luke, a palpable sense of dread. He glanced at the saber, then back at her, his gaze piercing, yet distant. And then, with a dismissive, almost casual flick of his wrist, he tossed his father's lightsaber, the very symbol of his heroic past, of the Jedi Order itself, over his shoulder, letting it tumble down the jagged cliffs to the churning sea below. That singular action, so shocking in its indifference, was more than just a rejection of a weapon. It was a profound declaration. It was Luke Skywalker, haunted by his past, initially refusing the call, refusing to train Rey, and indeed, refusing to be the hero the galaxy so desperately needed him to be. His reluctance was a shield, built from years of grief and regret, a barrier against a future he feared would only repeat the tragedies of his past. Why such a drastic dismissal? It wasn't simple exhaustion or even a jaded view of the Force. No, Luke's fear of Rey was far more complex and deeply rooted. When he looked at this young scavenger, he didn't see a new hope, but rather a reflection of the very raw, untamed power that had once blossomed and then tragically twisted within his own failed student, Ben Solo. The echoes of his greatest failure resonated in every spark of Rey's burgeoning ability. He had seen that raw potential before, that immense untrained Force sensitivity, and it had led to catastrophe, to the destruction of his new Jedi Order, and to the rise of Kylo Ren. How could he risk that again? How could he bring another such power into being when his last attempt had ended in such profound heartbreak and galactic devastation? Luke saw Rey not as a solution, but as a symptom. She was a symbol of the galaxy's naive, almost desperate hope in the very Jedi legacy he had come to despise. For decades, the galaxy had clung to the idea of the Jedi, clinging to the belief that they were the answer, the ultimate guardians of peace and justice. But from Luke's perspective, the Jedi had failed. They had become complacent, dogmatic, and ultimately unable to prevent the rise of the Empire, unable to foresee the corruption within their own ranks, leading to cycles of conflict that seemed destined to repeat. The weight of that legacy, the burden of that supposed power, had broken him. He believed that the Force, in its unbridled form, was too dangerous, too easily corrupted, and that the Jedi's attempts to wield it had only ever led to more suffering. His isolation on Ahch-To wasn't merely a physical retreat, it was a spiritual and ideological one. He was trying to sever ties, not just with the galaxy, but with the very notion of the Jedi, and with the immense, unpredictable power of the Force itself. He had found a fragile peace in the quiet oblivion of the island, a desperate attempt to escape the overwhelming burden of his past failures and the crushing responsibility of his own power. When Rey arrived, full of earnest belief and undeniable Force strength, she represented everything he had tried to leave behind. Her very presence challenged his self-imposed exile, shattered his carefully constructed walls of grief and regret. He didn't fear Rey herself as a person. He feared the potential she embodied, the echo of Ben Solo's power, and the inescapable cycle of light and shadow that he believed the Jedi had only perpetuated. He feared that by training her, he would only be forging another weapon, another potential instrument of destruction, doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. The image of him tossing the lightsaber over his shoulder remains one of the most poignant and misunderstood moments in the saga. It wasn't a callous act, but a visceral expression of a man at the absolute end of his emotional rope, burdened by a history he could not escape, and terrified of the raw, untamed power that now stood before him, mirroring the ghost of his greatest failure. He was not the confident hero, but a broken figure, choosing to reject the call, not out of malice, but out of a deep-seated fear that he would only fail again, bringing further sorrow to the galaxy and to himself. This profound reluctance, this fear of Rey, wasn't about her, but about him. It was a testament to the crushing weight of his own past, the enduring pain of his regret over Ben Solo, and his ultimate disillusionment with the very legacy he was meant to uphold. Luke Skywalker, the hero, had learned that sometimes the greatest burden of power isn't wielding it, but living with the consequences of its misuse. What do you think was the most heartbreaking reason behind Luke's refusal to train Rey? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this explanation thought-provoking, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more journeys into the heart of our favorite stories. Until next time, may the Force be with you.